I never imagined my life would turn out like this. Jessica and I were that couple everyone else wanted to be. We seemed to have it all: thriving careers, a gorgeous house, and the luxury to travel whenever the mood struck us. No kids to hold us back, just two people in love, living what I thought was our dream life. It all began one evening when I got home earlier than usual. Jessica wasn't expecting me, so she looked a bit startled when I walked through the door. She quickly stashed her phone away, but not before I caught a glimpse of the name Ryan on the screen. My heart sank, but I decided to keep it cool. Maybe it was nothing. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" I asked, forcing a smile onto my face. "Good, just the usual," she replied, a little too quickly. There was something off about her, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Over the next few days, more signs started popping up. She was glued to her phone, laughing at messages and slipping away to take calls in private. She started coming home later and later, always armed with a new excuse. Work ran late, I went out with the girls, or I needed some time to myself. One night, I couldn't take the uncertainty any longer and decided it was time to confront her. "Jessica, is there something you need to tell me?" I asked as we sat down for dinner. She looked up, caught off guard. "What do you mean? You've been acting strange lately. Who is Ryan?" Her face went pale and she stumbled over her words. "He's just a friend from work, nothing to worry about." "Just a friend?" I pressed. "Then why all the secrecy?" She sighed, clearly frustrated. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're being paranoid." But I wasn't being paranoid. I was sure something was going on. That night after she fell asleep, I took her phone and looked through her messages. What I found confirmed my worst fears. There were countless texts between her and Ryan, filled with flirtatious messages, plans to meet up, and even worse, explicit photos. My heart raced as I scrolled through the messages. She had been lying to me for months, sneaking around behind my back. I felt a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and deep sadness. How could she do this to me, to us? The next morning I began packing my things. I couldn't bear to stay in the same house with her, knowing what she had done. As I packed, Jessica came into the room and saw the suitcases. "Mike, what are you doing?" she asked, panic creeping into her voice. "I'm leaving, Jessica. I know about you and Ryan." Her eyes widened in shock. "It's not what you think. Please, let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," I said, my voice icy. "You betrayed me. I can't stay here anymore." Tears filled her eyes as she realized I was serious. "Please, Mike, I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything." I shook my head. "It meant enough for you to lie to me and sneak around behind my back. I can't trust you anymore." She reached out to me, but I stepped back. "Just take your things and go, Jessica." As I continued to pack, Jessica finally understood that I was leaving for good. The realization hit her hard, but it was too late. The damage was done, and there was no turning back. I finished packing, shoving the last of my clothes into the suitcase. Jessica stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face, her hands trembling. Part of me felt a sting of sympathy, but the anger and betrayal were too strong to ignore. "Mike, please, just give me a chance to explain," she begged. "And why should I?" I shot back, refusing to even look her way. "You've done plenty of explaining to Ryan." She moved closer, trying to bridge the gap between us. "It was a stupid, meaningless fling, a mistake. I never wanted to hurt you." I finally turned to face her, my eyes cold and unyielding. "A mistake? A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk, not carrying on an affair for months. You lied to me over and over again. How am I supposed to move past that?" Her face crumpled, and she sank down onto the bed, her sobs shaking her whole body. "I don't know, Mike. I don't know why I did it. I was just feeling so lost and lonely." "Lonely?" I scoffed. "We have everything, Jessica. I've given you everything. How could you possibly be lonely?" "It's not about the stuff, Mike. It's about us. We barely even talk anymore. It's like we're just two strangers living in the same house." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "So your answer was to cheat? To find comfort in someone else's arms?" "It wasn't like that," she insisted, wiping her tears. "It just happened. I never planned for this." Well, congratulations, I said bitterly. You've succeeded in tearing down everything we've built together. She stood up, her face desperate. Mike, I love you, I truly do. Please, let's go to counseling. We can fix this. I shook my head. It's too late for that. You made your choice, Jessica. Now you've got to live with it. I grabbed my suitcase and brushed past her, heading for the door. As I reached the front hall, she followed, her voice cracking with emotion. What about us? What about everything we've been through together? I paused, my hand resting on the doorknob. I thought we had something real, Jessica, but now I see it was all just a lie. I opened the door and stepped outside. She rushed after me, grabbing hold of my arm. Please, Mike, don't leave. I can't lose you. I pulled my arm free, my heart hardening. You already have. As I walked toward my car, I heard her collapse on the porch, her sobs echoing through the night. It took every ounce of strength not to turn back, but I knew if I did, it would only make things worse. I couldn't let her tears change my mind, not after everything she had done. I drove away, my mind spinning with thoughts of what to do next. I needed somewhere to stay, a place where I could clear my head and figure out my next steps. I couldn't believe this was real. My whole world had been flipped upside down in a matter of days. I checked into a small hotel on the edge of town. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was a place to rest my head and sort through everything. I dropped my suitcase on the floor and collapsed onto the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. Everything felt surreal, like I was stuck in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. After lying there for a few moments, I reached for my phone and called my best friend, Dan. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, Mike, what's going on, man? He greeted me, sounding cheerful. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. Dan, I need to talk to you. It's about Jessica. There was a brief pause on the other end. What happened? You sound awful. Can you meet me at the hotel? I'm at the Magnolia Inn. Yeah, sure. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up the phone and sank back onto the bed, trying to wrap my head around everything. How did it come to this? Jessica and I were supposed to be happy, supposed to be in love, but now it all felt like a facade. I thought about all the times we'd laughed together, the vacations we'd taken, the quiet nights spent at home. It all seemed so distant now, like memories from someone else's life. Dan arrived quickly, and I opened the door to let him in. The concern on his face was immediate and palpable when he saw me. Mike, what the hell happened? You look like you've been through a war. I sighed and ran a hand through my hair. Jessica's been cheating on me, I found out a few days ago. His eyes widened in shock. Are you serious? Jessica? I can't believe it. I nodded, the weight of it all crashing down on me again. I found texts, pictures, the whole 9 yards. She's been seeing this guy Ryan for months. Dan shook his head and sat down next to me. Jesus, Mike, I'm so sorry. What are you going to do? I left her, I said, my voice breaking slightly. I couldn't stay, I just couldn't. Of course I understand, but what now? Are you going to stay here for a while? I don't know, I admitted. I can't think straight. I just needed to get away, to clear my head. Dan put a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Listen, man, you can stay with me for as long as you need. I've got a spare room and my place isn't far from here. You shouldn't be alone right now. A wave of gratitude washed over me. Thanks, Dan. I really appreciate it. We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of the situation pressing down on us both. Finally, Dan spoke again. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive her? I sighed, feeling a deep ache in my chest. I don't know. Right now it feels impossible. She lied to me over and over. How can I ever trust her again? It's going to take time, he said gently. But you don't have to decide anything right now. Just take it one day at a time. I nodded, knowing he was right. It was too early to think about forgiveness or the future. All I could focus on was getting through each day, one step at a time. Dan stayed with me for a while longer, talking about anything and everything to distract me from Jessica. It helped, even if just a little. As the night dragged on, I felt a faint glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could get through this. But deep down, I knew the road ahead was going to be long and hard. The betrayal cut deep, and it would take a long time for the wounds to heal. For now, all I could do was lean on my friends and try to piece my life back together, one broken piece at a time. The next few days passed in a blur. I moved into Dan's spare room, thankful for his support. He kept me company, dragging me out for beers and trying to take my mind off things. But no matter what we did, I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling of betrayal. One evening, as we were watching a mindless action movie, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hey Mike, it's Laura from work. I heard about what happened with Jessica. There's something you should know. Can we talk?" Laura was a colleague I'd always gotten along with, and I wondered what she could possibly have to tell me. I texted her back, agreeing to meet at a nearby coffee shop the next day. When I arrived at the cafe, Laura was already there, nursing a cup of coffee. She looked up and gave me a sympathetic smile when she saw me. "Hey, Mike, thanks for meeting me," she said, gesturing for me to take a seat. "Sure, Laura, what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She took a deep breath. "I'm not sure how to say this, but I think you should know that Jessica has been lying to you about more than just Ryan." A cold chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" Laura hesitated, then pulled out her phone. "I didn't want to get involved, but I've seen her with other guys, not just Ryan. I work late sometimes, and I've seen her leaving bars and restaurants with different men." My stomach turned as she showed me a series of photos, Jessica laughing with one man, holding hands with another, and even kissing someone else. It felt like a punch right to the gut. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to cause trouble," she said, looking genuinely regretful. "But when I heard you'd left her, I thought you deserved to know the whole truth." I nodded, feeling a mix of anger and gratitude. "Thank you, Laura. I appreciate it." We talked a bit more, and I learned that Jessica had been living a double life for quite some time. The more I heard, the more I realized how deep her betrayal really went. It wasn't just Ryan. It was a pattern of deceit that stretched back much further than I'd ever imagined. When I got back to Dan's place, I felt like a zombie. I collapsed onto the couch, staring blankly at the wall. "What's wrong?" Dan asked, noticing the state I was in. "Laura from work told me Jessica's been seeing other guys too, not just Ryan," I said, my voice hollow. Dan's expression turned grim. "I'm sorry, man. That's brutal." I nodded, feeling numb. "I just don't get it. How could she do this? Was everything a lie?" "Maybe not everything," Dan said gently. "But it's clear she wasn't honest with you. You deserve better, Mike." His words were a small comfort, but I knew he was right. I needed to start thinking about my future, about how to move on from this mess. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions. I swung between anger, sadness, and a strange sense of relief. As painful as it was to learn the truth, it also felt like a weight had been lifted. I didn't have to wonder anymore. I knew what Jessica was capable of, and I could start rebuilding my life without her. One afternoon, I decided to confront Jessica one last time. I needed closure, and I wanted to see if she had any explanation for her actions. I called her and arranged to meet at a park near our old home. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting on a bench looking anxious. She stood up as I approached. "Mike, thank you for meeting me," she said, her voice trembling. "Save it, Jessica," I said, not bothering to hide my anger. "I know about the other guys, not just Ryan, all of them." Her face went pale and she looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "I'm sorry, Mike, I really am. I was lost and I made so many mistakes." "Mistakes?" I echoed, my voice rising. "You call cheating a mistake? You lied to me over and over. How could you?" She started crying, but I felt no sympathy. "I don't know, Mike. I was unhappy, and I didn't know how to fix it. But I never wanted to hurt you." "Well, you did," I said flatly. "And now it's over. I just wanted to hear it from you to see if there was any part of you that still cared." "I do care, Mike. I love you. I know I don't deserve it, but I do." I shook my head, feeling a strange sense of calm. "It's too late, Jessica. You broke us. There's no going back." I turned and walked away, not looking back as she sobbed on the bench. It hurt, but it was also freeing. I knew I was done with her lies and betrayal. It was time to focus on myself and start healing. As I walked back to my car, I felt a glimmer of hope. It was going to be a long road, but I was ready to face it one step at a time. The confrontation with Jessica was both a relief and a deep wound. I spent the next few weeks at Dan's place, slowly trying to piece my life back together. It was strange to imagine a future without her, but I knew it was the only way forward. Dan had been an incredible support, but I realized I needed to regain some independence. I started looking for an apartment, something small and easy to manage. Eventually, I found a cozy one-bedroom not too far from work. It wasn't much, but it felt like a fresh start. Moving in was a bittersweet experience. Dan helped me haul my boxes and furniture up the narrow stairs. As we finished setting up the last of my things, he clapped me on the back. "Look at this place, Mike. It's a new beginning," he said with a grin. "Yeah," I agreed, though a part of me still felt the sting of loss. As I settled into my new routine, I threw myself into work. It was a welcome distraction, something I could immerse myself in completely. My colleagues were supportive, even though I hadn't shared many details about the breakup. They knew something was off, but they respected my need for privacy. One Friday evening, I found myself at a local bar with a few co-workers. Laura was there, and we ended up talking more about personal stuff than we ever had before. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her eyes filled with genuine concern. "I'm getting there," I replied, taking a sip of my beer. "It's been tough, but I feel like I'm starting to move forward." She smiled. "I'm glad to hear that. You deserve to be happy, Mike. Jessica didn't appreciate what she had." "Thanks, Laura. That means a lot." As the night went on, I realized how easy it was to talk to Laura. She listened, offered support, and even made me laugh. It felt good to have someone who understood and didn't judge me. After a few more drinks, Laura suggested we leave the noisy bar and take a walk. The night air was cool and refreshing, a welcome break from the stuffy atmosphere inside. We wandered through the quiet streets, talking about everything and nothing. At one point, we stopped at a small park and sat on a bench. The silence between us was comfortable, and I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. "You know, Mike," Laura said softly, "I've always admired you. You're strong, even when things get tough." I looked at her, surprised. "Really? I don't feel strong most of the time." She smiled. "That's because you're too close to see it. But trust me, you are." A warmth spread through me at her words. "Thanks, Laura. I needed to hear that." We sat there for a while longer, just enjoying each other's company. When we finally parted ways, I couldn't help but feel a spark of something new. Maybe it was the beginning of something more than just friendship. The following week, I threw myself into work with even more determination. I started taking on new projects, pushing myself to prove that I could thrive despite everything that had happened. It was exhausting, but also deeply rewarding. One evening, as I was wrapping up for the day, I received a call from Jessica. I hesitated before answering, unsure of what she could possibly want. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Mike, it's me. Can we talk?" Her voice sounded strained, laced with desperation. "What is it, Jessica?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. I miss you. I know I messed up, but can we at least try to be friends?" I sighed, feeling that familiar weight of disappointment settling in. "Jessica, I don't think that's a good idea. There's too much history, too much pain." "Please, Mike. I need you in my life, even if it's just as a friend." I thought about it for a moment. A part of me wanted to help her, to be there for her as I always had. But deep down, I knew it was time to let go. "I can't, Jessica. I need to move on, and so do you. We can't keep clinging to something that's broken." There was a long pause on the other end. "I understand, I really do. I'm sorry, Mike, for everything." "Goodbye, Jessica," I said softly, then hung up the phone. It felt like a final chapter was closing. There was a sense of relief, but also a lingering sadness. Still, I knew I had made the right decision. As I put my phone away, I thought about the future. It was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. For the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was ready to face whatever came next, one step at a time. The days turned into weeks, and life gradually began to take on a new rhythm. My new apartment started to feel like home, a place where I could rebuild myself, piece by piece. Work continued to be a welcome distraction, and my colleagues, especially Laura, were an incredible source of support. One evening, Laura and I found ourselves working late on a project. The office was quiet, and we were the only ones left. As we wrapped up the final details, she looked at me and smiled. "Want to grab dinner? My treat?" she offered. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Sure, that sounds great." We headed to a small, cozy restaurant nearby. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the sterile office environment we had just left. As we sat down and ordered our meals, I felt a sense of relaxation wash over me. "So, how have you been, really?" Laura asked, her eyes filled with concern. I sighed, taking a sip of my drink. "It's been tough, but I think I'm finally starting to move on. It's strange, though. Sometimes I still feel this emptiness, like something's missing." She nodded, understanding. "That's normal, Mike. You've been through a lot. It takes time to heal." Our food arrived and we started eating. The conversation flowed easily, and I found myself opening up to her more than I had with anyone else since the breakup. We talked about everything: our dreams, our fears, our pasts. It felt good to connect with someone on such a deep level. As the night wore on, I couldn't help but notice how beautiful she looked in the soft lighting of the restaurant. Her laughter was infectious, and her presence was comforting. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of genuine happiness. When we finished dinner, we walked back to our cars. There was a moment of awkward silence as we stood there, neither of us wanting the night to end. "Thanks for dinner, Laura. I really needed this," I said, feeling a bit nervous. "Me too, Mike," she replied, stepping closer. "I've really enjoyed spending time with you." Before I could overthink it, I leaned in and kissed her. It started soft and tentative, but quickly deepened, filled with a longing that had been quietly building between us. When we finally pulled apart, I saw a mix of surprise and happiness in her eyes. "Wow," she whispered, a smile spreading across her face. "I didn't expect that, but I'm glad it happened." "Me too," I said, my heart racing. We said our goodbyes and drove home, but my mind was buzzing with thoughts of Laura. It was too soon to call it love, but there was definitely something there, something worth exploring. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Laura and I started seeing each other more often, and it became clear that our connection was more than just a rebound. She made me laugh, she listened, and she understood me in ways I hadn't realized I needed. One Saturday, we decided to take a day trip to the countryside. We packed a picnic and set out early in the morning, driving along winding roads and soaking in the scenic views. When we arrived at a beautiful meadow, we spread out a blanket and settled in for the day. As we lay there, basking in the sunlight, Laura turned to me with a serious expression. "Mike, I want you to know something," she began. "I care about you a lot, and I know you've been through a lot, but I don't want to rush things. Let's just take this one step at a time, okay?" I nodded, feeling a wave of relief. "That sounds perfect, Laura. I don't want to rush either. I'm just happy to be here with you." We spent the rest of the day talking, laughing, and simply enjoying each other's company. It was peaceful and healing, a reminder that life could still offer beautiful moments. As we packed up and headed back to the city, I felt a sense of optimism for the first time in a long while. My life had been shattered, but now, piece by piece, it was coming back together. Laura was a big part of that, but so was the newfound strength I had discovered within myself. I knew there would still be challenges ahead, but I felt ready to face them. With friends like Dan and someone like Laura by my side, I believed I could handle anything. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the future. It was still uncertain, but for the first time it didn't scare me. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I had the strength and support to get through it. I closed my eyes, feeling a deep sense of peace. Tomorrow was a new day, and I was ready to face it head on. The days turned into weeks, and my life continued to take shape in ways I hadn't anticipated. My relationship with Laura blossomed, bringing a sense of joy and stability that had been missing for a long time. I started to feel like I was finally moving on from the pain of the past, embracing a future filled with promise and possibility. One afternoon, as I was heading out of the office, my phone buzzed with a message from Laura. She suggested we meet for coffee at our favorite cafe. I eagerly agreed and headed over, looking forward to seeing her. When I arrived, I spotted her sitting at a corner table, her face lighting up as she saw me. But just as I was about to walk over, I noticed someone else in the cafe, Ryan. My heart skipped a beat and a surge of anger shot through me. He hadn't noticed me yet, and I wasn't sure how to handle the situation. I took a deep breath and walked over to Laura, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Hey," I said, leaning down to kiss her cheek. "Hi," she replied, smiling, but her smile faded as she noticed the tension in my expression. "What's wrong?" I nodded toward Ryan, who was sitting a few tables away, engrossed in his phone. "That's him. That's Ryan." Laura's eyes widened, and she glanced over at him. "Do you want to leave?" I shook my head, feeling a strange sense of determination. "No, I think it's time I confront him." She reached out and squeezed my hand. "I'm here with you, whatever you decide." I gave her a grateful smile, then stood up and walked over to Ryan's table. He looked up, surprised as I approached. "Mike," he said, his voice hesitant, "what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "But that doesn't matter. We need to talk." He looked uncomfortable but gestured to the empty chair across from him. I sat down, feeling a mix of anger and curiosity. "Look, Mike, I know I messed up," Ryan began, his tone apologetic. "I didn't mean for things to get out of hand with Jessica. It just happened." "Just happened?" I echoed, my voice rising. "You think that justifies what you did? You think you can just brush it off as a mistake?" Ryan winced. "I know it was wrong. I never should have gotten involved with her. But I didn't come here to make excuses. I came to apologize." I stared at him, feeling a swirl of emotions. Part of me wanted to punch him, to make him feel the pain he had caused me. But another part of me wanted closure, to finally put this chapter behind me. "Why did you do it?" I asked, my voice quieter now. "What was it about her that made you think it was okay to betray me?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Mike. I was going through a rough patch in my life, and Jessica was there. She made me feel wanted, needed. But I see now how selfish that was. I hurt you, and I hurt her too." I took a deep breath, trying to process his words. "Do you have any idea what you've done to my life? How much pain you've caused?" "I do," he said, his voice sincere. "And I'm truly sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his words lingering in the air. Finally, I stood up, feeling a sense of closure. "I appreciate your apology, Ryan, but it doesn't change what happened. I don't think I'll ever forgive you for what you did, but I need to move on, and so do you." He nodded, looking down at the table. "I understand. I hope you find happiness, Mike. You deserve it." I walked back to Laura, who had been watching the entire exchange. She stood up and hugged me tightly. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice full of concern. "I think so," I replied, feeling a strange sense of relief. "It's not what I expected, but maybe it's what I needed." We left the cafe hand in hand and walked through the nearby park. The confrontation with Ryan had stirred up a lot of emotions, but it also felt like a weight had been lifted. I had faced my past and come out stronger on the other side. As we walked, Laura squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, Mike. That couldn't have been easy." "It wasn't," I admitted, "but it was necessary. I needed to hear him say it, to understand why it happened." "And now?" she asked, looking up at me. "Now I focus on the future," I said, smiling. "With you." We spent the rest of the evening together, talking about our dreams and plans for the future. It felt good to look ahead, to see a path forward that was filled with hope and possibility. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of peace. The past would always be a part of me, but it didn't define me. I had the strength to move on, to build a new life filled with love and happiness. And with Laura by my side, I knew that anything was possible. Life continued to improve as I focused on my relationship with Laura and my career. The confrontation with Ryan had given me a sense of closure, allowing me to fully embrace the future. Laura and I spent more time together, and our bond grew stronger every day. It was clear that what we had was special, and I was determined not to let anything ruin it. One sunny afternoon, Laura and I decided to visit a local art fair. It was one of those spontaneous decisions that felt just right. We wandered through the colorful stalls, admiring the various artworks and crafts on display. As we strolled hand in hand, I realized how much my life had changed for the better. "Look at this," Laura said, pointing to a beautiful painting of a serene beach scene. "Isn't it gorgeous?" "It is," I agreed, smiling. "It reminds me of our trip to the coast last month." She laughed, a sound that always made my heart skip a beat. "That was such a perfect weekend. We should do it again soon." "I'd love that," I said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. We continued to explore the fair, enjoying each other's company and the vibrant atmosphere. After a while, we decided to take a break and grab some ice cream from a nearby vendor. We found a quiet spot in the park and sat down to enjoy our treats. As we talked and laughed, I felt a sense of contentment that I hadn't experienced in a long time. Laura was not only my partner but also my best friend. She had been there for me during my darkest moments, and now we were building something beautiful together. "Mike," Laura said, her tone turning serious, "I've been thinking. We've been spending a lot of time together, and it's been amazing. But I want to know, what do you see for us in the future?" I looked at her, fully grasping the weight of her question. It was a moment of vulnerability, and I wanted to give her the honest answer she deserved. "Laura, I see a future with you. I want to keep building on what we have, to see where this relationship can go. You've been my rock, and I can't imagine my life without you." She smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I feel the same way, Mike. I want to be with you, to support you, and to create a life together." We sat there, holding hands and sharing our hopes and dreams. It was a conversation that solidified our commitment to each other, and it felt like a turning point in our relationship. As the weeks went by, Laura and I continued to grow closer. We started talking about more serious topics like moving in together and making future plans. It was exciting and a little scary, but it felt right. Then, one evening, as we were having dinner at my apartment, I brought up the idea of living together. "Laura, we've been spending so much time together, and I love it. What do you think about the idea of moving in with me?" Her eyes widened in surprise, and then she smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that. I'd love to move in with you, Mike." We spent the next few weeks planning the move, packing up Laura's things, and making space for her in my apartment. It was a busy time, but it was also filled with excitement and anticipation. Finally, the day came when Laura moved in. As we unpacked her belongings and set up her new space, I felt a sense of happiness that I hadn't known was possible. We were starting a new chapter together, and it was the beginning of something truly special. One weekend, while we were organizing the apartment, Laura found an old photo album of mine. She flipped through the pages, smiling at the memories captured in the pictures. "These are great, Mike. You have so many wonderful memories here." I sat down next to her, looking at the photos. "Yeah, a lot of good times. It's nice to look back and remember." She turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "We should start our own photo album, capture our memories together." "I love that idea," I said, kissing her on the forehead. As the months passed, we did just that. We took trips, had adventures, and documented our journey together in a new photo album. Each picture was a testament to our love and the life we were building. One evening, after a particularly lovely day spent hiking and picnicking in the mountains, Laura and I were sitting on the couch looking through our album. She turned to me, her eyes filled with love. "Mike, I can't imagine my life without you. You've made me so happy, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." My heart swelled with emotion. "I feel the same way, Laura. You mean everything to me." We sat there, holding each other, and I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Our love had risen from the ashes of my past, and it was stronger than ever. The future looked bright, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly at peace. With Laura by my side, I knew that anything was possible. Together we were unstoppable, and I couldn't wait to see what the future held for us. Life with Laura was everything I had hoped for and more. We had settled into a comfortable routine, balancing work, friends, and our time together. Each day felt like a new adventure, and our bond grew stronger with every passing moment. But as life often does, just when things seemed perfect, the past had a way of resurfacing. One afternoon, I was at work when I received an unexpected phone call. It was Jessica. My heart skipped a beat, and I debated whether or not to answer. Curiosity got the better of me, and I picked up the call. "Mike, it's Jessica. Can we meet? There's something I need to talk to you about," she said, her voice tinged with urgency. "What is it, Jessica?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "It's not something I can discuss over the phone. Please, it's important." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a cafe later that evening. I called Laura to let her know what was happening, and she was incredibly supportive. "Do what you need to do, Mike. Just remember, I'm here for you," she said, her voice full of reassurance. When I arrived at the cafe, Jessica was already there, looking nervous and out of place. I sat down across from her, feeling a mix of anxiety and curiosity. "What's this about, Jessica?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "Mike, I found out something that you need to know. I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. I was stunned, struggling to process what she had just said. "Pregnant?" I echoed, my mind racing. "How? I mean, who's the father?" She looked down, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's yours, Mike. I found out after we split up. I didn't know how to tell you." My mind reeled with the implications. If what she was saying was true, it meant my life was about to change in ways I hadn't anticipated. "Are you sure it's mine?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Yes," she said, her voice cracking. "I haven't been with anyone else since we broke up. I had a paternity test done, and it's confirmed. You're the father." I sat back, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "Why are you telling me this now, Jessica?" "Because you deserve to know. I made so many mistakes, and I don't expect anything from you, but this baby, it's ours. And I thought you should have the chance to be a part of its life." I rubbed my temples, trying to think clearly. "I need some time to process this, Jessica. This is a lot to take in." She nodded, wiping away her tears. "I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll be here if you want to talk or if you have any questions." I left the cafe in a daze, my mind swirling with thoughts and emotions. I needed to talk to Laura, to figure out what this meant for us. When I got home, Laura was waiting for me, her face filled with concern. I told her everything, and she listened patiently, her expression unreadable. "Wow, Mike, that's a lot to take in," she finally said, her voice calm and steady. "How are you feeling about it?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I'm shocked, confused, scared. I never expected this." She reached out and took my hand. "We'll get through this together. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But you need to think about what you want and how this will affect our future." Her unwavering support meant the world to me, but I knew this decision would deeply impact both of us. I spent the next few days in deep contemplation, weighing my options and trying to envision a future that included this new reality. One evening, Laura and I sat down to have a serious discussion. "I've been thinking a lot about this," I began, "and I can't ignore the fact that there's a child involved. I want to be there for my kid, to be a part of their life." Laura nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "I figured as much, and I respect that. But what does that mean for us?" "I want us to stay together, Laura. You're my rock, and I love you more than anything. But I also understand if this is too much for you. If you need time or space, I get it." She took a deep breath, her gaze steady. "I love you, Mike, and I want to be with you no matter what. This is a huge change, but I think we can handle it. We'll figure it out together." Her words filled me with a sense of hope and determination. We spent the next few weeks preparing for the changes ahead, discussing how to navigate co-parenting with Jessica and what it would mean for our relationship. As the months passed, Jessica's pregnancy progressed, and I began to embrace my new role as a father. I attended doctor's appointments, prepared for the baby's arrival, and worked on building a co-parenting plan with Jessica. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Throughout it all, Laura remained by my side, her support unwavering. We faced the challenges together, and our relationship grew stronger as a result. Finally, the day came when Jessica went into labor. I rushed to the hospital, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. Laura was there too, holding my hand and reassuring me every step of the way. After hours of labor, our baby was born, a beautiful, healthy boy. As I held him in my arms for the first time, tears of joy and love streamed down my face. In that moment, everything changed. My priorities shifted, and I knew I had a new purpose in life. Looking at Laura, who was smiling through her own tears, I realized that our love had carried us through the darkest of times, and now it would help us embrace this new chapter together. We named our son Lucas, and from that day forward, life became a beautiful blend of love, challenges, and unexpected joys. With Laura and Lucas by my side, I knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it together, stronger and more united than ever before. Life with Lucas was a whirlwind of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and countless moments of pure joy. As a new father, I found myself navigating uncharted territory, but with Laura by my side, every challenge seemed surmountable. Jessica and I managed to establish a cooperative co-parenting arrangement, allowing Lucas to thrive in an environment filled with love and support from both his parents. One sunny Saturday morning, Laura and I decided to take Lucas to the park. Watching him toddle around, his tiny hands grasping at flowers and his laughter echoing through the playground, filled me with a deep sense of pride and contentment. Laura was right there with us, her eyes glowing with happiness as she played with Lucas. "He's growing up so fast," Laura remarked, her hand slipping into mine as we sat on a bench watching Lucas explore. "Yeah, he is," I agreed, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "I can't believe how much our lives have changed in such a short time." "And yet it feels like we've been a family forever," she said, resting her head on my shoulder. I looked at her, feeling a surge of love and gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done without you, Laura. You've been my rock through all of this." She smiled, her eyes sparkling with affection. "We're a team, Mike. We've got each other, and that's what matters." As we watched Lucas play, I realized just how much my life had transformed since those dark days of betrayal and heartbreak. What once felt like an insurmountable obstacle had become the foundation for a new, stronger life, filled with love and purpose. That evening, after putting Lucas to bed, Laura and I sat on the couch, wrapped in each other's arms. The house was quiet, and the weight of the day seemed to melt away in the comfort of her embrace. "Mike," Laura began softly, "there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about." I looked at her, a bit apprehensive. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, her eyes serious yet filled with warmth. "I love our life together, and I love Lucas like he's my own. But I've been thinking about the future, and I want us to make it official. I want to be more than just your partner. I want to be your wife." Her words took my breath away. I had thought about proposing to her many times, but hearing her express the same desire filled me with overwhelming happiness. "Laura, I've wanted to ask you the same thing for so long," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You mean everything to me. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in her eyes as she nodded. "Yes, Mike, yes, I will." We embraced, both of us crying tears of joy. It was a moment of pure bliss, a culmination of everything we had been through, and everything we had built together. The next few months were a whirlwind of wedding planning, balancing work, and raising Lucas. We decided on a small, intimate ceremony with close friends and family, a celebration of our love and the journey that had brought us to this point. On the day of the wedding, as I stood at the altar waiting for Laura, I felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. When she walked down the aisle, looking radiant in her white dress, my heart swelled with love and gratitude. We exchanged vows, promising to support each other through thick and thin, to love and cherish each other for the rest of our lives. As we kissed, sealing our vows, I knew that this was just the beginning of a beautiful new chapter. Laura, Lucas, and I were a family, bound by love and strengthened by the challenges we had overcome. Our life together was far from perfect, but it was ours. We faced the ups and downs, the joys and struggles, knowing that we had each other to lean on. And in the quiet moments, as we sat together watching Lucas sleep or sharing a simple dinner, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the second chance at happiness that life had given me. With Laura by my side and Lucas in our hearts, I knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it together, stronger and more united than ever before. And as we moved forward hand in hand, I was filled with hope and excitement for all the beautiful moments yet to come.